Please join me and welcome Kyle.
Hey, hi everyone, thank you so much. So I hope everyone had a good lunch. I'm going to do my best to keep you from going into that after lunch slump, right? So we'll try and make this entertaining. So I'm here today to talk to you about using AI to help create personas and journey maps. So how many of you are kind of cringing right now at that thought? Because, I knew there were some pitchforks. I knew it. I'm prepared for it. Bring it. So I totally get this, right? There is a lot of skepticism when it comes to using AI in UX research, and rightfully so. I was right there with you, right? 2 years ago, I would have never given this talk. I had a colleague who was like, hey, what do you think of all this AI stuff going on? I'm like, I'm staying as far away from it as possible. And that's what I was telling everyone too. I was highly skeptical of it. And now I'm giving a talk on it and trying to get other people to use it in UX research. So quite the 180. So how did I get there? Well, 2 years ago, this was me, right? Doom and gloom, thinking, oh my goodness, what's happening to research? Nobody's doing research, they're just using AI, this is nuts. And am I gonna have a job, right? So I would not have been giving this talk. But what I learned when I started to finally embrace it, and I took some time to really experiment using all different kinds of generative AI tools, that there is some good there, right? There's some bad, but there's ways that we can use it that can really help us to more efficiently do our work. And that fear of, am I gonna have a job, really quickly was displaced. And I wanna share with you a little bit more about that and what I've learned. So AI is a tool that helps get the job done more efficiently. It does not replace us at all. I want to make that clear. And I feel that the only way to keep AI from taking your job is to use it to do your job better. And I think that that saying is really true, that AI is not going to take your job, but somebody using it will. So I want to get this clear, make this very clear right off the bat, that I am not suggesting using AI to simply fabricate personas and journey maps. I see this a lot, it drives me insane. This is not the goal. We don't want this, okay? I'm not expecting somebody to come strolling in saying, yeah, you could just whip out that persona without talking to a single person, that'd be great. Not the goal. So, I'm hoping at this point, some of you are feeling like maybe you can lower those pitchforks. But if not, that's what the Q&A is for, right? So this talk is really gonna focus on using AI prompts, helpful AI prompts with your data, not just throwing prompts out there and just hoping that generative AI has trained itself on a model of God knows what, spitting out something that might resemble your users. No, we want to work with your data. So you're going to see a lot of examples here of different prompts. I promise I will not be reading them word for word and putting you to sleep in the process. But I'll be highlighting some. So let's start with personas, right? Because personas, you need to understand who's on the journey before you start talking about the journey. Now, I can't simply just go into how to create a persona without first talking a little bit about the two different types. Because generative AI can really help with both. Whether you're doing proto-personas or actual personas based on research, it can help. And for those of you that might not be familiar, really quick, a proto-persona is basically assumptions-based personas. Not much research has been done at all. Maybe there's some secondary research, well, hopefully. And with the proto-personas, the benefit of doing that is you're getting all those assumptions out on the table, right? How many of you work on teams where, one person has a completely different idea in their mind as to what the user cares about, how they use the product? It's a great tool for getting those assumptions out and just being able to debate them a little bit. And really, there's no debate here about which one is better. I definitely think there is value in both, and doing a proto-persona exercise before you actually go in and do the research. And Tamra Adlin, who wrote the book Persona Lifecycle, or the Persona Lifecycle book, she's a huge proponent of proto-personas, and she likes to call them alignment personas because it really gets the team to align on who it is they're designing for. But she's such a fantastic human being. She's funny. If you ever have a chance to listen to her talk or just talk with her, I highly suggest it. But she says here, we act like encouraging people to articulate their assumptions will summon doom, like saying Beetlejuice or something. The only assumptions that can hurt your product are the ones you don't know about. And that could not be more true. But on the flip side of this persona debate, if you want to call it that, we have Erica Hall here, right? If you're going to use personas to guide your design and policy decision making, they must be based on actual ethnographic research. Otherwise, you're just giving your personas or your personal biases cute names, which I love that quote. And it's so true. Both of them are so true. Neither one of them is right. I feel that both are necessary, and we're going to learn a little bit more about how to use Gen AI to help us do this. Okay, so before I do that, just a quick side note here. I think labels really matter. I can't tell you how many projects I've been on where people are talking about proto-personas and they have no idea what that means. They think they're creating real personas, and that when they've gone through that proto-persona process, they've checked the box, like, okay, we're done our personas, now we can move on. It's like, no, we didn't actually do any research. We cannot fully check off that persona box yet. So I prefer to call them assumptions-based personas. I hear some people call them ad hoc personas. There's no right or wrong term, but just a personal preference. I find it hard for anybody on a team to realize that no research has been done if you're calling it an assumptions-based persona. It's pretty evident. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about this. Creating personas is hard, right? We have to get this right. It's a one-page document chock full of a lot of information. We want to get across so much about the user, their needs, what they care about, their motivations. We're really trying to say, anybody who looks at this, I understand who I'm designing for. And for me personally, what's hard about it, it's not deciding what I want to include. I typically have a very good idea of what I want to include in a persona, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But what I struggle with is the creative writing aspect of creating a persona. I'm a research nerd. I can geek out on data all day long. I'm not great at coming up with the perfect tagline or name for a persona, or perhaps it's some kind of really well-written narrative or summary of a day in the life of a persona. It's difficult for me. I will spin my wheels, I'm embarrassed to say, maybe an hour or two trying to just get that right. And you want to spend time on that. You want it to be right. And I can't tell you how nice it is to have an assistant now, this Gen AI assistant, that can take my data and really spit out something pretty darn good in a blink of an eye, something probably better than I could do in a couple hours trying to figure out how to creatively spin this. So I find a lot of value in that. So how do we do this? Well, the first thing we do is gather all of our research data and insights, right? That's the first step. What do I mean by that? Depending on whether you're doing proto-personas or research-based personas, it's going to be a little different, right? Research-based, all your transcripts, questions, surveys, research reports, maybe you have some analytic data. If you're doing proto-personas, hopefully somebody has documented all those great assumptions and opinions that people have about your end users. Maybe there's some anecdotal evidence that can be input into Gen AI, or if there's any kind of market generalizations. Oftentimes we have loads of market research but no user research yet. So anything like that that you can feed in is great. Now, the next step is decide on your persona section. So what are we going to include in the persona? This is where Gen AI is not helpful, in my opinion. Maybe, possibly it could be, but I don't feel that this is something we should put on the Gen AI assistant to do. This is the heavy lifting that we have to do, and we should want to do. When it comes to knowing what's right to put in a persona, it varies, right? What does your team need? What assumptions need to be addressed? And Gen AI is not going to understand that. They're not going to know that. So when it comes to this question, I'm often asked that, and it's hard. It really, truly depends, and nobody likes that answer. And we say it a lot in this industry, but it's true. And forgive me, but to me, memes are probably the best thing to ever come out of the internet. But the thing you have to keep in mind are what's unique to your team's needs. And I have a whole nother talk on how to figure out what's right to put in a persona. I'm not going to get into that now, but I would be remiss if I didn't mention, in a nutshell, that every single element on that persona should have a purpose, and it should be relevant to what you're trying to convey. The user's needs, how they're using the product, the behaviors. If it's not getting your design team to understand or empathize with the end user better, it does not belong there. And let me just give you a quick example of that. I see this constantly in personas, right? We have some personality traits. Oh, this person's a little aggressive, or how relevant really is this to the product? Now, it may very well be. You might be designing a tool where this stuff really matters, their personality traits. Oftentimes, this and other things like they're married with a dog, maybe that matters if you're creating, something for WAGs or something, but generally it doesn't matter. So just strip out the stuff that doesn't. But that's my 2 cents on that before we start talking about how to do the prompts here. Now, you need to upload all your data, all the insights that you gathered to your Gen AI tool. This becomes your data set. So what kind of files can you upload? Well, it's pretty awesome. If you haven't fooled around yet, pretty much everything but video, and not Google Docs, but you just export your Google Docs to a Word doc or a PDF. So you can upload PowerPoints, Excel. It's really pretty amazing here, and this is really for all Gen AI tools. Now let's talk about data privacy, because this is the real reason why I stayed away from Gen AI to begin with. We all know as UX professionals, we're constantly dealing with confidential information, all the research that we gather, the data, it has to be kept secure. When this stuff first started rolling out, the security was really unknown. It was a big question mark, so I stayed away from it. You need to know what your organization's stance is on this. You have to understand what their privacy concerns are and if you're working within them. Many tools out there, and some are not secure, and you need to know that. So here are some of the bigger tools out there. If you're using ChatGPT or DeepSeek, well, first, these tools, ChatGPT and DeepSeek by default share data, right? Now, if you have a ChatGPT Plus account, you're paying for Plus, it's still sharing your data and it's still training its AI models on it, right? You have to get ChatGPT Team, and that's important to know, a little more expensive, but if you want security and you want it encrypted and you don't want it trained on your data, that's what you need. DeepSeek, it's going to China and it's not secure. They don't have any kind of membership that allows you to secure your data, so just keep that in mind. Also, just a side note, I ran into this with an organization. ChatGPT team is secure to a point, but there is also a loophole where any member of that team can invite another member. So it's only as secure as the people who are using it, which is a problem for some organizations. But also, I should note, I've been fooling around a lot with Hey Marvin and Dovetail and others that have embedded AI analysis tools, which are great. So you can use those as well, that are secure. All right, so now to the good stuff. Providing the AI prompt. How you guys doing? Is the turkey sandwich hitting? It's hitting, isn't it? And I have to give credit where credit's due. That was Dan Brown that gave that joke after a lunch talk last week at the Information Architecture Summit. I thought it was great. I'm like, I gotta use that. All right. So, what do you do to create an AI prompt to help you create a persona? These are the elements that it must have. You have to tell it what the product is, right? You have to tell it who uses it, why they're using it, that is their goals, the user's goals, and the information that you want to include. So, do you want motivations, challenges? What do you want to include? So here's an example of what that looks like. I promised you I'm not going to read the slide. I'm just going to call out some things. The things that I've mentioned before, right? Who the primary audience is, what they're using the product to accomplish, what we want, what sections we want included in the persona. I have these slides already uploaded to SlideShare. If you look up my name, Kyle Soucy, you will find them. Just so you know, there's lots of prompts, so you can take a closer look at them. And I want you to, if you want to take this and run with it. But definitely modify this, of course, to meet the needs of what you want in your persona. So you're going to get a response, something like this from ChatGPT. It's an endless scroll. It's just amazing to me how much it can spit out. Like, I upload 20 documents, and in a blink of an eye, I get all this back. Usually it's some form of like a bulleted list. Sometimes when you're looking at the results, you might be thinking, you know, it's all right, and you have to really be looking for accuracy. But there are times where you might be thinking, okay, I want something a little more rich. This was a good first pass. This is where we want to refine and iterate on the prompt a little bit. If you're doing proto-personas, I highly suggest giving AI some behavior prompts to use. So when I'm working in real life with real people and I'm running a proto-persona workshop, I like to do behavior prompts with the team to really get at the good stuff. Who really is the user? Because oftentimes I'll ask people on the team, like, oh, do you know who your user is? And they'll say, oh yeah, it's like, you know, usually male, 30s, they like hiking. I'm like, no. What are they doing? What do they care about? And let's talk a little bit more about what that means. So a behavior prompt is asking a really focused question that reveals that real user behavior. So an example might be, when users encounter X, what do they typically do? That reveals a behavior. And I tell you, I have probably 40 or so prompts that I really routinely like to use to get at this good stuff. And I was fooling around, I'm like, all right, this helps uncover the patterns and motivations and frustrations. Let's feed this to AI, see what happens. It was really cool. It was very good. Working with my data that I gave it, it really pulled out a lot of great stuff. So if we look here at the prompt, it says, so I gave it the first prompt, got my response, here's the second prompt. Use the following behavior prompts to rewrite the motivations and affinities section for this persona. And I gave it, for motivations, you know, personal goals. What are your short-term, long-term goals? Professional aspirations. What is the persona's career aspirations, ambitions, you know, incentives, rewards? When it comes to affinities, what are their lifestyle choices, preferences, interests? I gave it a ton of questions, and what I get back is amazingly rich and a lot of great things that I can pull into my persona. That is accurate based on data. And if it's a proto-persona, using this stuff, it's amazing what some of these tools are trained on, that it really does figure out, I think, some good assumptions that we can later try and maybe validate through research. So good stuff here to use. So I find, in my experience, that it's better to spoon feed the data to Gen AI. I could write a 2-page prompt for Gen AI, but it's going to be confused. It tends to confuse the model. If I chunk it out and tell it to give me something and then say, okay, let's work on that bit a little bit more, I find I get better results. Okay, so for proto-personas as well, since you're not doing actual research, there was a great suggestion from Patrick Neiman to use research questions. He suggests doing a prompt like generate user research questions that would validate this user persona as correct. And it's a great way to help you create your discussion guide and take this and run with it. And then also, if you're doing data personas based on research, there's Bill Bullman gave a great tip for asking ChatGPT to do a day in the life narrative. Now, I tried this prompt. The prompt here says, provide me a day in the life story for a persona using the following user interview data as a baseline. I use this, and what I find is sometimes what I literally get back is 8 a.m., wakes up, does this, 10 a.m. does that, and it's okay to get a real schedule, but what I really was looking for was a true narrative. So I change it slightly to say, you know, give me 2 paragraphs on what a day in the life would be like for this persona. And what it comes out with is pretty good. This one was done for parents, and it gave me a day in the life of a parent, what their fears, motivations were for the product that we were using. And I just love how I'm just like, make it shorter, and it's like, done. That would take me so long to try and figure out the best way to make it more concise. So this is where the speed and efficiency really comes from. Okay, words of caution here, right? We hear it all the time with using Gen AI. Garbage in, garbage out. Be very careful here. If there are biases in your data, they will be amplified and perpetuated in your results, definitely. You have to be aware of that. Also, they are fallible, all of them. All of them will be fallible. And I love that when someone's like, oh, AI hallucinates all the time, you can't use it. No, it doesn't hallucinate all the time. There is a chunk in there, you know, but you have to know your data well enough to be able to point that out. I don't want us to become lazy researchers where we're like, yeah, we have the data, we don't really have to be thorough and really understanding it. AI will figure it out for us. Please don't do that. That's not good, because somebody needs to be able to keep their eye on the results and what it's spitting out is actually accurate. So that's persona creation. And now that we have a nice, robust persona, we can use that to create a nice journey map that Gen AI can help us with as well. So the steps are really similar here, very similar. There's only 2 differences here. Step 2, obviously we're not gonna figure out what our persona sections are. Instead, we're gonna figure out the journey map elements. And then step 4, we're gonna give it a different prompt. So let's look at that step 2, figuring out your journey map elements. Again, we do the heavy lifting here. I would not want you to type into ChatGPT or something else and say, here's a persona, give me a journey map for this persona, period. No. Gen AI will give you what it thinks are important, the stages of that journey might be, or the information within it, but only you know what your team needs to understand and what really the stages are. So if we look at a blank journey map here, what I'm talking about is at the top of that journey map, the stages, right? At the top, the left-hand column, what's going down there, what the information that you want to know for each and every stage. Do you care about thoughts and feelings, emotions, jobs to be done, behaviors? All of that is up to us to decide on, not up to the chat AI agent. What they're going to help us with is really filling it in, which is great. It's a lot. It's a lot. A lot of this we will know ourselves, but sometimes we get stuck a little bit and it can help us. And let's see how. Okay, so again, we're going to upload our documents, but this time we've got a nice persona to add with it. You want to make sure to include that. So let's look at what a prompt for journey mapping should include. Again, who is on the journey? Your persona. What journey are they on? The stages of the journey and the information that we want to learn in each stage. Is it actions, thoughts, jobs to be done? So here's an example again of what that looks like. You can see at the top here, write a journey map for X persona. The map should focus on the journey of X. The stages would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? For each stage, I want to know the jobs to be done, the actions, the frustrations, on and on. You'll notice here that I give ChatGPT the definition of what I want, because I mean, you can't talk to another UX person here and have the same definition for jobs to be done or something else usually. So I can't assume that it knows exactly what I want just because I use that label. I like to be very specific with it and make sure we're on the same page, that it understands what I need. And it will give you just that. Now, the results are kind of crazy because a journey map is huge, right? For every single stage, you have 7 or 8 possibly different bits of information that you want. So for each stage, it's going on and on and on. But it's great stuff. It really does pull from your data exactly what's there. But there is a problem here with what it does. We're going to talk about that. When we look at these results, you might be looking at them and being like, what? Where did it get that? I didn't give it that. And what's happening is it's making that up. It's completely making that up. And you might be thinking, oh, evil chatbot. No, good chatbot. It's doing what it was trained to do. The way LLMs work, large language models, is predictive. If I say Mary had a little, it's going to say lamb. That's what they're trained to do. They are trained to make assumptions. They don't work where they say, I don't know, and just leave it blank. They always fill in the blank. They always fill in the blank. You have to be careful for that, right? So if it's filling in the blank and saying, you have to say to it, are you making this up? And it will tell you that it is. And it's pretty cool. And you can actually tell it not to make it up if you want it to. So I want to read this to you. This is how, after I get that long list, and if I'm starting to sense that it's hallucinating a little bit or making things up, this is what I say. Where the data set is incomplete or lacks specific information required for a comprehensive understanding of the user journey, you are permitted to make logical assumptions. Clearly label these assumptions within the journey map to distinguish them from data-driven insights. This is huge. It will actually label them. And you want to know that. What I think is this is a beautiful tool when you have a journey map and you want to say to stakeholders like, okay, here's a journey map, but more research needs to be done here. It identifies the research gaps for you. It says, this is where we're making this up. We have a gap in knowledge here, a gap in data. We need to do more research here to complete this journey map. That's great. So, like I mentioned too, you can do the flip side where you can say, please do not make stuff up. Do not make assumptions. Just say, I don't know, and it will do that. So there are ways around this. Again, I'm also saying like include a brief explanation of why this assumption is made, and it will point to where the missing data is, sometimes in a specific document that you uploaded, so you can see where more data is needed in a certain area. And I'm really clear about the outcome expected. So there's some tips here that I want to go over here. If that long list is like, oh my gosh, I can't believe we have to go through all that, just ask for it to be in a table or a visualization. It's amazing some of the things you can do, and I really encourage you to experiment here because it can be quite fun how some of the results can be displayed. And I do not suggest having opportunities or solutions created by Gen AI. So what I'm talking about here is in a journey map, you'll often see opportunities listed, Gen AI, or solutions. To me, this is great. This is where our research takes action. People can take action on our research when they see this. And I think it's wrong really to have a journey map without this swim lane in it. But if it's being created by Gen AI, it's usually pretty surface level stuff. I find, in my opinion, that chatbots, they don't have the collective team's expansive knowledge, in-depth understanding to really come up with true opportunities and solutions. And really this is a team effort to get these figured out and on the map. So I would avoid doing that. All right, so to wrap up here, there are some things that I definitely want you to walk out of this talk and doing, and that's one is just to embrace this, right? We can't put the genie back in the bottle. It's out there. I think you need to just finally get to that point of just doing it. You'll see right now, I feel that it's a great thing. I have this wonderful little assistant now that never gets tired, that's always eager to please, and is actually quite pleasant. She, I call her she actually compliments me sometimes. And it's nice to have an intern that does that. And yeah, sometimes my intern will hallucinate, but what intern doesn't? Right? So embrace this, get comfortable with it. I want you to also don't take any shortcuts with your research, please. I don't want you to come out of this talk thinking that we're just going to use AI now to just simply fabricate our personas and journey maps. That is not the goal. I want rigor to still be embraced in the research. And keep experimenting and sharing. Patrick Neiman gave a talk earlier today. He created a Slack group for people or using AI and UX. I have it in the slides here. I encourage everybody to join that and just share what they're doing because it's changing constantly. Oh, just every day. And this is just the beginning. I have a feeling it's going to look a lot different this time next year. I was talking to someone earlier, they're like, we're not even going to be prompting, we're going to be doing something totally different. So, and I believe it, just how fast everything's moving. So, thank you. I encourage you to reach out to me if you have any questions. I'm on LinkedIn there, you can see. You can contact me on my website, Usable Interface, and I do have that podcast for UX consultants if you're interested in uxconsultantslounge.com. And if you want to learn more, if you want to see these ChatGPT prompts really up close and personal, I suggest going to this article on Medium that I wrote. You can take more time with it. And then here's the Slack group that Patrick Neiman created, AI for UX. Such a good group. Lots of books, Patrick's books, UXGPT, excellent. Then also these are the books that I've always loved. And some of them are, sad to say, like 20 years old now, but I still refer to them. I still love them. And then here's some other articles, which again, the slides are on SlideShare, so you'll see all that there. All right, any questions? Or pitchforks, I welcome it all.
We have a question.
Oh, right behind you.
Thanks. So my question is, if you were presented with an end result like polished persona, beautiful journey map, what questions would you ask to challenge? Was this a proto, you did it in 5 minutes, or how did you really get here?
So can you repeat that? Was it, what questions did I ask the ChatGPT agent?
No, this is you as an expert. When faced with someone's work presented to you, how do you kind of fact check a little bit? What questions would you ask to determine that someone isn't just taking the easy way out?
Isn't it, if you're looking at a persona or journey map and wondering if they actually know the data. So simply, where did this come from? What data was this based off of? They should be able to point, anything that's on a persona or journey map, we should always be able to trace back, if it's database, to some source of truth, right? Where did you hear this? Where did this come from? And I think there is an exercise there of creativity. Like, oftentimes, we're not going to hear exactly word for word something that might be listed in a persona, but you can see the theme has come out. If you've talked to enough people, that theme has emerged. So I would want to see, I create what I call a findings analysis board or a themes board after research sessions. I would want to see that, like, okay, is this where this came from? So you should be able to, or research should be able to tell you that.
Thank you.
Yeah, good question.
Hey Kyle, great stuff. Quick question. I wanted to know how your adoption of ChatGPT and generative AI has impacted your consulting service. So like one example might be is, does a client demand that, you can't charge 5,000, you have to charge 500, or do you ever have to be, for example, open, like I'm going to use ChatGPT, and if you don't want me to use ChatGPT, you have to sign a waiver. So I wonder if you could talk about how it's impacting your business.
That's a good question. So I feel I've seen it two different ways. So if I have direct clients, sometimes they might not want us to use any ChatGPT tools, like financial institutions that don't want their data shared, they don't want it trained on it. Even if you show them a tool or even give them the option to buy into one with it, it's a no-go. And it's a bummer, honestly, because once you start using it, that analysis is really, it goes a lot quicker and it's a lot easier. It is not foolproof, but I find that it does make our work much faster. Now, do people ask for the price to be reduced? No, I've not seen that with client work, direct client work, but what I have seen, subcontracting. So I will often partner with other design companies, design firms, design agencies who either they don't have a research team or they have overflow and they reach out to freelancers like me. And instead of getting the time that I would normally get to do analysis, which is usually not very much, they're chipping away at that. Like, we've invested in this tool, so we have to prove actually to the people who have given us the budget for this tool that the reason that it's worth the money for this tool is because it makes analysis quicker and everything faster. And it does to a degree, but man, I feel like as a researcher, we never get enough time to just marinate in the data. Sometimes you just need to let it soak a little bit and think about it, but oftentimes we're not given a lot of time to do that. Like, the interviews are done Thursday afternoon, and like Friday morning, they're like, so are there takeaways? What do you got for me? It's like, okay, we just did 12 interviews this week. Let's give me a moment here. But that happens, and I think when these tools are in place, especially if these agencies are always moving fast and they're always trying to move as quickly as their clients demand, I'm seeing less time given for that, which is a bummer. But yeah. Yeah.
Can you go into more detail on avoiding bias, especially identifying bias in research that's we already have gathered?
Okay, so avoiding bias in research we already have gathered. Yeah, that. Yeah. Oh, you want to read this guy?
Sorry. I was just asking, can you describe in more detail how you avoid bias, especially identifying bias in research that you've already done?
Yeah, that's tough. So the bias will be there. Usually it's in the recruitment, right? So if it's not an inclusive recruitment, we've left out key people, that's right there. It's almost in what's not in the data, right? We're missing this key person or this whole entire user group. That's where the bias tends to be, where all of a sudden we're training our AI model on an incomplete picture. And that's only going to perpetuate one dominant group's thoughts, feelings, concerns, challenges. So that's where I typically find the most bias coming out. When it comes to if it's something more specific, like you feel like you've done an inclusive recruit, but it feels slightly tainted in some way, only more research is going to fix that, I think, to really try and vet it out. Possibly doing that mixed methods approach where, okay, we don't have enough money or time to do qualitative research, maybe we do some more surveys, some quantitative survey to see if the numbers really back up these findings. More research is really the only answer, and oftentimes they don't want to hear that because the time and the money and the budget is just not there.
So for the proto-persona and then the research-based persona, is that like sequential? Like you do proto-persona before you do research and then a secondary, or is there situations that one is better?
Yeah, ideally you're doing the proto-persona or alignment persona exercise first to first get that alignment with the team. Like, let's get all of our opinions and assumptions out there, and then do the research to try to figure out who's right. But I've seen times too where they have personas, maybe they're a little stale or they're old and they need to do some more research. They've already gone through that process, and now before they embark on refreshing them or doing some more research about them, they're going to do a proto persona first just to see, where they're at in terms of their assumptions. Like they'll look at the persona that exists, tear it apart a little bit, and be like, I don't know that this exists anymore, something like that, but like a deconstructed persona. Yeah.
I was wondering, once you have all the amazing data, what AI tools do you use to design out the personas or user journeys? What's your preference?
Oh, to do the actual design?
Yeah.
Oh, good question.
If at all.
I'm old school. I'm not what I would call a very good visual designer. I will use Miro for really everything to kind of create something more vector-y. I oftentimes have a great team of people that either, if I'm subcontracting, we have a whole design department for part of that agency, they can make it pretty and polished after I give them the draft version. If it's direct client work, sometimes I will hire a graphic artist to be like, put the polish on this, because that's not in my wheelhouse. That works. I do love a lot of the AI tools, though, for creating images. I have not done that yet, though.
Thank you.
Any other question? Oh,
Thank you for sharing your time and insights. I'm curious about, so I've used something similar to this to build personas, or not so much journey maps, but sometimes when we talk about filling in the gaps with logical assumptions. Sometimes, because I work for a startup which is heavily resource and time restricted, I've asked where it's filling in logical assumptions for ChatGPT or the AI bot to give me data or research or sources for those assumptions. And I was just curious if you've tried doing the same, and if you found any particular GPT tool or any particular methodology that helps you find better sources and better data for those assumptions.
Yeah, so asking ChatGPT, like, where did you get this? Where did you come up with this assumption? Yeah. So in addition to asking it, why was this assumption made? Also, where did this come from? Where did you get this? I don't have a lot of good luck, though, with getting a good answer. I really don't. I think I do more with Claude. I've been liking Claude a little bit more than ChatGPT lately, and I just find that it's better at pointing out sources.
Okay.
So yeah, because it can vary, and it gives a very obtuse answer that's not clear. Like, it doesn't want to admit that it's just lying.
Right. Sometimes I find links that are hallucinated links. That's a big problem I face as well.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah. Great. Yeah. I don't know where we are in time. Anything else? All right. Well, thank you so much for being a great audience, especially after lunch.